The morning sun cast long shadows across Grass Valley, California, and Victoria Turner stood at the altar of the small wooden church wearing her mother's ivory lace dress, watching her groom fail to meet her eyes for the third time in as many minutes. September 1878 had arrived with golden light and cool breezes, the kind of weather that should have made her wedding day perfect, but something in Charles Brennan's expression sent ice through her veins despite the warmth filtering through the windows. She had loved this man for 3 years, believed every promise he had made during their courtship, and now, as the preacher opened his Bible, she noticed her fiancé's hands trembling in a way that had nothing to do with nervous excitement. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, his voice echoing through the packed church. Victoria tried to focus on the words, on the faces of the townspeople gathered to witness her marriage, but her attention kept returning to Charles. His jaw was clenched tight, his eyes fixed somewhere over her left shoulder. They had met when she was 19 and he was 24, a businessman from Sacramento who had come to Grass Valley to invest in the mining operations that had made the town prosperous. He had courted her with flowers and poetry, promises of a beautiful life together in Sacramento, where he owned a large house and maintained successful business interests. Her father, who had passed away last winter, had approved of the match. Her mother had been thrilled. "If anyone here has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." The church door slammed open with such force that several women gasped. Victoria spun around, her veil fluttering with the movement, and saw a tall figure silhouetted against the bright morning sun. As her eyes adjusted, she recognized Adam Zachariah, a cowboy who worked on the Patterson Ranch just outside town. She knew him only slightly, had seen him in town buying supplies, had heard her father speak well of his character before his death. He was 26 years old, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that touched his collar, and right now his expression was grim as he strode down the aisle with his hat in his hands. "I have reason," Adam said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent church. "Miss Turner deserves to know the truth before she binds herself to this man." Charles went pale. "You have no right to interrupt this ceremony." "I have every right to speak the truth," Adam replied, stopping a few feet from the altar. He looked at Victoria, and she saw something in his hazel eyes that made her heart pound, genuine concern mixed with regret. "Miss Turner, I am sorry to do this to you here, but I could not let you marry this man without knowing what he has hidden from you." "This is outrageous," Charles sputtered. "Remove this man from the church." But Victoria raised her hand, silencing her groom. Something in Adam's demeanor told her he was not here to cause trouble for trouble's sake. "What truth?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. Adam took a deep breath. "Charles Brennan is already married. He has a wife and 2 children in Sacramento. I know because I delivered horses to his home last month and met them myself. His wife, Eleanor, showed me their wedding photograph from 1872. She has no idea he is here attempting to marry again." The church erupted in shocked murmurs. Victoria felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "That cannot be true," she whispered, but even as she said it, she turned to Charles and saw the truth written across his guilty face. "I can explain," Charles began, reaching for her hand. Victoria stepped back, her mind reeling. "You are married? You have children?" Her voice rose with each word. "For 3 years you have courted me, made promises to me, all while you had a wife and family waiting for you in Sacramento?" "Eleanor and I have an arrangement," Charles said desperately. "We live separate lives. She understands that I need a companion here in Grass Valley while I conduct business. It is a practical matter, nothing more." "Does she know about this arrangement?" Adam asked quietly. "Because when I spoke with her, she seemed to believe her husband was faithful and devoted, simply away on business frequently." Charles's silence was damning. Victoria pulled off her engagement ring, the small diamond catching the light, and threw it at his feet. "Get out," she said, her voice shaking with fury and heartbreak. "Get out of this church and out of this town. If you ever come near me again, I will ensure everyone in Sacramento knows exactly what kind of man you are." "Victoria, please. You are being unreasonable." "Leave," she repeated, and this time her voice was cold as winter ice. "Now?" Charles looked around the church, seeing only hostile faces. Even his business associates from the mining company looked disgusted. He bent to retrieve the ring, then straightened and walked quickly toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The moment he was gone, Victoria swayed slightly, and Adam stepped forward instinctively, offering his arm for support. "I am so sorry," he said softly. "I know this was not the way you wanted to learn the truth, but I could not let you make vows to a man who had already broken his to another woman." Victoria looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "How did you know he was going to marry me today?" "I heard about the wedding when I was in town yesterday buying supplies. I recognized his name and knew I had to speak up. I spent all night riding back to Sacramento to confirm with his wife that I had the right man, then rode back at dawn to get here in time. My horse is half dead outside, but I could not live with myself if I stayed silent." The simple honesty in his words broke something inside Victoria. She had been so sure of her future, so certain that Charles loved her, and now everything lay in ruins around her. Her mother rushed forward from the front pew, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "Come, sweetheart," Martha Turner said gently. "Let us get you home." Victoria nodded numbly, allowing her mother to lead her toward the side door of the church. As they passed Adam, she paused. "Thank you," she managed to say. "You saved me from making a terrible mistake." "Any decent man would have done the same," Adam replied, but his eyes held something more than simple courtesy. "I hope you can recover from this, Miss Turner. You deserve an honest man instead of a liar like Brennan." Those words stayed with Victoria through the long, awful afternoon as she changed out of her wedding dress and listened to her mother rage about Charles's deception. They stayed with her through the evening as neighbors and friends came by with sympathy and casseroles. They stayed with her as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand how she had been so thoroughly deceived for 3 years. The next morning, Victoria woke early and dressed in her riding clothes. She needed to get out of the house, away from the pitying looks and whispered conversations. She saddled her mare, Daisy, and rode out toward the hills east of town, following the trails she had loved since childhood. The September air was crisp and clear, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. As Daisy picked her way along a narrow path, Victoria let her mind wander over the past 3 years, seeing Charles's deception with new eyes. His frequent trips to Sacramento, which he had always claimed were for business. The way he never invited her to visit his home there, always making excuses about renovations or his busy schedule. His reluctance to set a wedding date, always pushing it back until finally, this summer, she had insisted they marry in September or end the engagement. How many lies had he told her? How much of their relationship had been real? She was so lost in thought that she did not notice the rattlesnake coiled on a sun-warmed rock until Daisy shied violently. Victoria, caught off balance, tumbled from the saddle and landed hard on the rocky ground. Pain shot through her ankle as she hit, and Daisy, spooked, galloped back down the trail toward town. Victoria sat up slowly, testing her ankle and wincing at the sharp pain. It was not broken, she thought, but badly sprained. She tried to stand and nearly collapsed. The snake had disappeared into the rocks, but she was still a good 3 miles from town with no horse and an injured ankle. She looked around, hoping to see another rider, but the hills were empty except for the circling hawks overhead. "Miss Turner," she turned to see Adam Zachariah riding toward her on a large bay horse, leading a gray gelding behind him. He dismounted quickly and hurried to her side. "I saw your horse running back toward town without you," he said, kneeling beside her. "What happened?" "Rattlesnake spooked Daisy. I fell and did something to my ankle." Victoria tried to maintain her composure, but her voice shook slightly. After yesterday's humiliation, she hated appearing weak in front of anyone. Adam examined her ankle with gentle, competent hands. "Sprained, not broken. You were lucky. Can you stand if I help you?" "I think so." He offered his arm, and Victoria leaned on him as she slowly rose to her feet. The pain was intense when she tried to put weight on her injured ankle, and she gasped. "Easy," Adam said. "I'm going to lift you onto my horse, then take you to Doc Wilson. That ankle needs to be wrapped properly." Before Victoria could protest, he swept her up into his arms as though she weighed nothing. She found herself pressed against his chest, feeling the solid strength of him, smelling leather and sage and something distinctly masculine. He settled her carefully onto his horse's saddle, then swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. "Hold on," he said, and urged the horse into a careful walk. They rode in silence for a few minutes, Victoria acutely aware of his presence behind her, the warmth of his body against her back. Finally she said, "You seem to keep rescuing me, Mr. Zachariah. Call me Adam, please, and I was just in the right place at the right time. Twice in 2 days is more than coincidence. What were you doing out here?" She felt him shift slightly behind her. "I was checking on you," he admitted. "I knew yesterday must have been hard, and I worried you might need someone to talk to. When I saw your horse running loose, I feared the worst." Victoria did not know what to say to that. This man, who barely knew her, had ridden to Sacramento and back to save her from a bigamist, and now had come looking for her to offer comfort. It was more than Charles had done in 3 years of courtship. "Why did you care?" she asked quietly. "You do not know me." Adam was silent for a long moment. "I have seen you in town over the years," he said finally. "I have admired you from afar, if I am being honest. You always seemed kind to everyone, from the banker to the poorest miner. You had a smile that lit up a room. When I realized who Charles Brennan was planning to marry, I knew I had to act. A woman like you deserves better than lies and betrayal." Victoria's breath caught. "You admired me?" "Yes." His voice was quiet but firm. "I know I am just a cowboy, not a wealthy businessman like Brennan. I have no right to speak of such things, especially now when you are hurting. But you asked, and I will not lie to you. I would never lie to you." Something in those last words made Victoria's eyes sting with tears. "He lied to me for 3 years," she whispered. "How could I not have seen it? How could I have been so foolish?" "You were not foolish. You trusted someone you loved. That is not weakness, Miss Turner. That is courage. Brennan was the one who failed, not you." They reached town, and Adam guided the horse directly to Doc Wilson's office. The doctor, a kindly man in his 60s, clucked over Victoria's ankle and wrapped it tightly while Adam waited outside. When the doctor finished, he gave Victoria strict instructions to stay off her feet for at least a week. "You will need help getting around," Doc Wilson said. "I will speak to your mother about what you will need." Adam appeared in the doorway. "I can carry her home if that is acceptable." Victoria wanted to protest that she could walk, but the pain in her ankle made that impossible. "Thank you," she said instead, and found herself once again swept up into Adam's arms. He carried her through town, ignoring the curious stares and whispers. Victoria kept her eyes straight ahead, her cheeks burning. It was bad enough that everyone had witnessed her wedding day disaster. Now they were seeing her being carried through the streets by a cowboy. When they reached the Turner house, Martha opened the door with wide eyes. "Victoria, what happened?" "She took a fall from her horse," Adam explained. "Doc Wilson says the ankle is sprained. She needs to rest it for a week." Martha ushered them inside, directing Adam to carry Victoria to the parlor sofa. He set her down gently, then stepped back, hat in his hands. "I should go," he said. "I need to return this horse to the Patterson Ranch and check on my own." "Wait," Victoria said. "Please, I never properly thanked you for what you did yesterday. You saved me from a terrible mistake, and today you helped me again. I am in your debt, Adam." He met her eyes, and Victoria saw warmth there, along with something deeper that made her heart skip. "You owe me nothing, Miss Turner. I only did what any decent person would do." "Not everyone would ride through the night to Sacramento and back to help a stranger," Victoria pointed out. "Not everyone would care enough to check on someone they barely know. You are a good man, Adam Zachariah. I see that now." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I hope you feel better soon, Miss Turner. If you or your mother need anything, I am staying at the boarding house on Main Street until the end of the month. After that, I will be at the Patterson Ranch." After he left, Martha sat down beside Victoria with a thoughtful expression. "That young man has feelings for you," she said quietly. "Mother, he barely knows me. Sometimes the heart knows before the head does. I saw the way he looked at you, and the way you looked at him, for that matter." Victoria shook her head. "I was supposed to get married yesterday. I cannot possibly think about another man right now. I am not suggesting you should. But when you are ready, whenever that may be, I think Adam Zachariah would be worth getting to know. Unlike Charles, he has already proven his character." Victoria spent the next week confined to the house, her ankle propped up and wrapped in bandages. Friends came to visit, bringing food and sympathy. Some of the women from church organized a small gathering to cheer her up, though Victoria could tell they were all desperately curious about what had happened after Adam's dramatic revelation. She told the story as briefly as possible, feeling the humiliation afresh each time. On the 5th day of her confinement, there was a knock at the door. Martha answered it and returned carrying a large bouquet of wildflowers in a simple glass jar. "These are for you," she said, setting them on the table beside Victoria. "From Adam Zachariah. He came by to ask after your ankle, but when I told him you were resting, he left these instead." Victoria touched one of the purple asters, her heart warming at the gesture. Charles had given her expensive roses from the florist, showy arrangements meant to impress. These simple wildflowers, picked from the meadows around Grass Valley, felt more genuine somehow. "Did he say anything?" she asked. "Just that he hoped you were healing well and that he would check in again soon." Victoria found herself watching the door more carefully after that, hoping for another visit. But Adam did not come back. By the time her ankle had healed enough for her to walk carefully with a cane, she had convinced herself that he had only been being polite, that his feelings, whatever they had been, had cooled. 2 weeks after her ruined wedding, Victoria dressed carefully in a simple blue calico dress and took her first walk into town. She moved slowly, still favoring her ankle, but it felt good to be out of the house. She had errands to run, letters to post, and she refused to hide away any longer. She was at the general store, examining bolts of fabric, when she heard Charles's voice behind her. "Victoria, please, I need to speak with you." She turned, her hand tightening on her cane. Charles stood in the doorway of the store, looking haggard. He had clearly not left town as she had demanded. "We have nothing to discuss," she said coldly. "Please, just 5 minutes. I can explain everything. I do not want your explanations. I want you to leave Grass Valley and never return." "I cannot. My business interests are here. Victoria, what Adam Zachariah told you, it is more complicated than it seems." "What is complicated about you having a wife and children that you never mentioned in 3 years of courtship?" Victoria's voice rose, despite her intention to remain calm. "What is complicated about you attempting to commit bigamy?" The other customers in the store had stopped their shopping to watch. The store owner, Mr. Henderson, looked ready to intervene. "I can give you things that Cowboy never could," Charles said desperately. "Wealth, status, a fine home. What can he offer you? A life of poverty on a ranch?" "He offered me the truth," Victoria said, "something you never did. And he is worth 10 of you, Charles Brennan. Now get out of my sight." "You are making a mistake." "The only mistake I made was believing a word you said. Leave, or I will ask Mr. Henderson to fetch the sheriff." Charles's face flushed red, but he turned and stalked out of the store. Victoria stood shaking, her knuckles white on the handle of her cane. Mrs. Henderson, the store owner's wife, hurried over with a chair. "Sit down, dear. That awful man. We heard what he did to you. The nerve of him showing his face in town." Victoria sank into the chair gratefully, her ankle throbbing from the confrontation. "I thought he would have left by now. He's been staying at the hotel, claiming his business requires him to remain. Several of the town council members have asked him to leave, but legally there is nothing they can do unless he actually breaks the law." The door opened again, and Victoria tensed, but this time it was Adam who entered. He took one look at her pale face and came straight to her side. "I saw Brennan leaving. Did he bother you?" "He wanted to talk. I told him to leave me alone." Adam's jaw tightened. "I will have a word with him." "No," Victoria said quickly, touching his arm. "Please do not. He is not worth it. I just want him to leave town and leave me alone." Adam looked down at her hand on his arm, and Victoria realized she was still touching him. She started to pull away, but he caught her hand in his calloused fingers gentle. "If he troubles you again, tell me, please. I know you are strong enough to handle him yourself, but you should not have to." "Thank you," Victoria whispered, very aware of his hand holding hers, of the way her heart was beating faster. Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat delicately. "Mr. Zachariah, perhaps you could escort Miss Turner home. She should rest her ankle." "I would be honored," Adam said, still holding Victoria's gaze. He offered his arm, and Victoria took it, leaning on him as they walked slowly out of the store. The afternoon sun was warm on her face, and she found herself in no hurry to reach home. "How's your ankle?" Adam asked as they walked. "Better. I should be able to walk normally in another week or so." "I am glad. I worried about you." So I heard. My mother told me you stopped by with flowers. I hope that was acceptable. I did not want to intrude, but I wanted you to know I was thinking of you." Victoria smiled. It was more than acceptable. They were beautiful, much nicer than any flowers Charles ever gave me. They walked in companionable silence for a few moments. Finally, Victoria said, "Adam, may I ask you something?" "Anything." "In the church you said you had admired me from afar. For how long?" He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Do you remember about 4 years ago there was a fire at the Patterson Ranch? The barn burned down and several horses were trapped inside?" Victoria nodded. "I remember hearing about it. Mr. Patterson was badly burned trying to save them. I was working there at the time. I managed to get most of the horses out, but I got caught in a falling beam, broke my leg and had some burns. They brought me to Doc Wilson, and I was laid up for weeks. During that time, you came to visit Mrs. Patterson. She was beside herself with worry about her husband, and you came every day to sit with her, to help her keep her spirits up. You brought food and flowers. You read to Mr. Patterson when he was recovering. You never made a fuss about it. Never expected thanks. You just helped because it was the right thing to do." "I barely remember that," Victoria said softly. "The Pattersons are good people. Of course I helped." "That's exactly my point. You helped because it was natural to you, because you were kind. I watched you during those weeks, and I saw the real you, not the polished young lady at church socials, but the woman with genuine compassion. I knew then that you were special. But you were courting Charles Brennan, and I was just a cowboy recovering from an injury. I had no right to even speak to you." Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him. "You should have spoken to me." "Would you have listened? You seemed happy with Brennan." "I thought I was happy," Victoria admitted, "but it was all based on lies. Everything I thought I knew about him was false." Adam reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm sorry you were hurt, but I cannot be sorry that you discovered the truth before you married him." Victoria's breath caught at his touch. "I'm not sorry either. Not anymore." "Victoria," he said softly, using her given name for the first time, "I know this is too soon. I know you need time to heal from what Brennan did. But I want you to know that when you are ready, when your heart has healed, I would like permission to court you properly, the way you deserve to be courted, with honesty and respect." She looked up at him, at the sincerity in his hazel eyes, at the kindness in his weathered face. "What if I do not want to wait?" she heard herself say. "What? What if I said I would like you to court me now? That I have spent 2 weeks thinking about you, about your kindness and your courage and your honesty? That I would like to get to know you better, Adam Zachariah?" A smile spread across his face, transforming it. "Then I would say I am the luckiest man in Grass Valley. But Victoria, I want to be sure. I do not want you to feel pressured or to think you need to rush into anything because of what happened with Brennan. I am not rushing. I am making a choice, with my eyes wide open this time. I see you, Adam. I see the man who rode through the night to save me from making a terrible mistake. I see the man who carried me home when I was injured. I see the man who brought me wildflowers and asked for nothing in return. I want to know that man better." Adam took both her hands in his. "Then I will tell you everything about myself, holding nothing back. I'm 26 years old, born in Texas. My father was a rancher, my mother a school teacher. They died when I was 17, and I have been working ranches ever since, moving from place to place. I have saved most of my wages, and I hope someday to have my own small spread. I'm not wealthy, but I am honest and hardworking. I will never lie to you, Victoria. That I promise." "That is all I need," she said softly. They stood there in the middle of the street, holding hands, and Victoria felt something shift inside her. The pain of Charles's betrayal was still there, but it was fading, replaced by something warmer and more hopeful. Over the next weeks, Adam courted Victoria with a quiet determination that won over even the most skeptical townspeople. He came by the Turner house every evening, sitting in the parlor with Victoria and her mother, talking about everything and nothing. He told stories about his years working ranches across California and Nevada, about the horses he had trained, the cattle drives he had worked, Victoria found herself fascinated by his tales, by the picture they painted of a hard-working, honest man who had made his own way in the world. In turn, she told him about her life, about growing up in Grass Valley, about her father's work as an assayer at the mining company, about her dream of one day opening a school for the miners' children who often went without education. Adam listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making thoughtful observations. On Sundays, they attended church together, and Victoria noticed the approving looks from the congregation. Adam was well-liked in town, known for his integrity and work ethic. More than one person told Victoria she had chosen well this time. One October afternoon, Adam borrowed a wagon from the Patterson Ranch and took Victoria on a picnic into the hills. The autumn colors were brilliant, gold and orange and red, painting the landscape. Adam had packed a basket of food, and they spread a blanket near a small creek, eating and talking as the water burbled over the stones. "This is beautiful," Victoria said, looking out over the valley spread below them. "I wanted to bring you someplace special," Adam said. "Someplace that reminds me of why I love California. The land here, it gets into your blood. I've worked ranches in Texas and Nevada and Arizona, but nothing compares to this. Will you stay here then, in Grass Valley?" Adam was quiet for a moment. "That depends," he said carefully. On what?" "On you." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Victoria, these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. Getting to know you, spending time with you, it has shown me everything I hoped was true. You are kind, intelligent, funny, and strong. You make me want to be a better man. I know we have not been courting long, but I need you to know how I feel." Victoria's heart was pounding. "How do you feel?" "I love you," Adam said simply. "I think I have loved you since I watched you care for the Pattersons all those years ago. I love the way you laugh, the way you think, the way you see the good in people. I love your strength and your courage. I would be honored to spend the rest of my life making you happy, if you will have me." Tears filled Victoria's eyes. "Adam, I love you too. I did not think it was possible to fall in love so quickly. But what I feel for you is nothing like what I felt for Charles. This is real and true, and it terrifies me and thrills me all at once." Adam cupped her face in his hands, his thumb gently wiping away a tear. "May I kiss you?" "Please," she whispered. His kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but when Victoria wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him closer, it deepened. She felt heat rush through her body, a desire she had never experienced with Charles. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Marry me," Adam said. "Not today or tomorrow, but soon, when you are ready. Marry me, Victoria, and I will spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They spent the rest of the afternoon by the creek, making plans for their future. Adam told her about his savings, about the small piece of land he'd been looking at on the edge of the Patterson property. It was not much, just 20 acres with a stream running through it, but it would be theirs. They could build a house, start a small horse breeding operation, maybe have a few cattle. "And a school," Victoria added, "for the miners' children. We could use one room of the house until we can afford to build a separate building." Adam grinned. "A school. I like that. You would be a wonderful teacher." "We will build something together," Victoria said. "A real life based on honesty and love." They set the wedding date for early December, wanting to be married before the winter weather became too harsh. Martha Turner was delighted, telling everyone who would listen that her daughter had found a true gentleman. The Pattersons offered their parlor for the ceremony, a spacious room that could hold more guests than the Turner house. As the weeks passed and November arrived, Victoria threw herself into wedding preparations. This time, there was no doubt, no secret worry. She knew exactly who Adam was, had seen him at his best and his worst. She had met his friends from the ranch, had watched him work with the horses, had seen his patience and skill. She knew he sometimes got frustrated when things did not go as planned, that he could be stubborn when he believed he was right, that he snored softly when he slept in a chair. She knew his flaws along with his virtues, and she loved him more for being real. One morning in late November, Victoria was in the general store buying supplies for the wedding when Charles Brennan appeared beside her. Still here? She asked coldly. I thought you would have left months ago. I wanted to see you, he said, to apologize properly. I do not want your apology. Victoria, please, I know I hurt you, I know I lied, but I did care for you. In my own way, I loved you. Victoria turned to face him fully. You did not love me, Charles. You loved the idea of me, of having a pretty young woman waiting for you in Grass Valley. You loved having someone to ease your boredom when you were away from your real family. But you never truly saw me, never truly cared about what I wanted or needed. If you had, you could never have deceived me the way you did. And Zachariah does see you, a cowboy who can barely afford to feed himself. Adam sees me better than you ever did. He knows my dreams, my hopes, my fears. He makes me laugh. He makes me feel safe. He treats me as an equal partner, not a pretty ornament. And yes, he is a cowboy, and I am proud to be marrying him. He has more honor in his little finger than you have in your entire body. Charles's face flushed. You will regret this. You will regret choosing poverty over comfort. The only thing I regret is wasting 3 years on you. Now leave me alone, Charles. Go back to your wife and children in Sacramento. Try to be the husband and father they deserve. But leave me and Adam in peace. She turned her back on him and walked to the counter to pay for her purchases. When she glanced back, Charles was gone. She never saw him again. The first week of December arrived cold and clear. On a Saturday morning, Victoria dressed in a new gown of deep green wool, her mother's pearls around her neck. This wedding would be small, just close friends and family, but it felt more real than the elaborate ceremony she had planned with Charles. Martha helped her with her hair, pinning it up with small white flowers. You look beautiful, sweetheart, and happy. That is what matters most. I am happy, Mama, happier than I ever thought possible after what happened with Charles. Adam is a good man. Your father would have approved. They arrived at the Patterson Ranch to find the parlor decorated with evergreen boughs and candles. About 30 people had gathered, friends and neighbors who genuinely cared about Victoria and Adam. The preacher stood ready, the same man who had been about to marry her to Charles, but this time his smile was genuine. And there was Adam, standing near the fireplace in his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his eyes fixed on the doorway. When Victoria entered, his face lit up with such pure joy that she felt tears threaten. She walked to him without hesitation, taking his offered hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. You are beautiful, he whispered. You are not so bad yourself, she whispered back, making him grin. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, there was only warm silence. When Adam said his vows, his voice was steady and sure, promising to love and honor Victoria for all his days. When Victoria said hers, she meant every word, promising to stand beside this good man through whatever life brought them. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the preacher said. Adam, you may kiss your bride. Adam pulled Victoria into his arms and kissed her deeply, to the cheers and applause of their friends. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling so hard their faces hurt. The celebration afterward was joyful, with food and music and dancing. Victoria danced with Adam, with Mr. Patterson, with Doc Wilson, with all the men who wanted to congratulate her. But always, her eyes found Adam across the room, and always he was looking back at her with love in his eyes. As evening fell, Adam and Victoria left the party and drove in a borrowed wagon to their new home. Adam had spent every spare moment over the past month building a small house on the 20 acres he had purchased. It was simple, just 3 rooms, but it was sturdy and warm, and theirs. Adam carried Victoria over the threshold, both of them laughing. He had lit candles before leaving for the wedding, and now the house glowed with warm light. A fire burned in the fireplace, and someone, probably Mrs. Patterson, had left a basket of food on the table. "Welcome home, Mrs. Zachariah," Adam said softly, setting Victoria on her feet. "Home," Victoria repeated, looking around at the simple furnishings, the handmade furniture, the cheerful curtains she had sewn herself. "It is perfect. It is just a start. We will add to it as we can afford to. In a few years we will have a bigger house, a barn, maybe some hired help. In a few years we will have a family," Victoria said, blushing slightly. Adam pulled her close. "I love you, Victoria. Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy." "Thank you for being the honest man I deserved," she replied, and kissed him. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and content. Afterward, they lay in bed talking quietly, making plans for the future, dreaming together in the darkness. The winter passed in a blur of hard work and happiness. Adam worked on improving their property, building a small barn, fencing pastures. Victoria started her school in the spare room and soon had 6 students, children of miners and ranch hands who were eager to learn. She taught them reading, writing, arithmetic, and history, and found joy in watching their minds open to new ideas. In February, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. Adam was thrilled, spinning her around in his arms despite her laughing protests that he would make her dizzy. They immediately began planning for the baby, discussing names and where the cradle would go. Spring brought warm weather and the first foals from the mares Adam had purchased. He proved to have a gift for training horses, and word spread. By summer, he had more work than he could handle, training horses for ranchers throughout the county. Victoria's school grew as well. She now had 12 students, and the spare room was becoming cramped. Adam promised that next year they would build a proper schoolhouse on the property. In early September, exactly 1 year after her ruined wedding to Charles, Victoria went into labor. Martha and Mrs. Patterson attended her, along with Doc Wilson. Adam paced outside the bedroom, wearing a path in the wooden floor. When he finally heard the cry of a baby, he burst through the door, unable to wait a moment longer. "You have a son," Doc Wilson said, grinning, "a healthy boy with good lungs." Adam rushed to Victoria's side. She looked exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. "Meet your son," she said softly. Adam touched the baby's tiny hand, awed when the little fingers closed around his. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Victoria." They named him James, after Victoria's father. Little James proved to be a content baby, sleeping well and rarely fussing. Adam was a devoted father, helping with middle-of-the-night feedings, rocking his son for hours, singing cowboy songs in his rough voice. The years flowed by, each one bringing new joys and challenges. When James was 2, Victoria became pregnant again, and this time they welcomed a daughter they named Rose. 2 years after that came another son, Henry. Their small house grew, with Adam adding rooms as their family expanded. The horse training business prospered. Adam's reputation for honesty and skill spread throughout California, and he began receiving requests from as far away as San Francisco. He hired 2 young cowboys to help him, teaching them his methods, treating them fairly. Victoria's school continued to grow until it had become a proper institution, with 20 students in a new building Adam had built with help from the community. Victoria taught with passion and dedication, shaping young minds and giving children opportunities they would never have had otherwise. On their 5th anniversary, Adam and Victoria stood on the porch of their home, now substantially expanded from the original 3 rooms, watching their children play in the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had married Charles?" Adam asked, his arm around her waist. Victoria leaned into him. "Sometimes, but only to be grateful that I did not. He would have made me miserable, I see that now. I would have been lonely in Sacramento, isolated from everyone I knew, married to a man who saw me as a possession rather than a partner." "I saw in the newspaper last month that his wife divorced him," Adam said. "Apparently I was not the only one who discovered his double life. Another woman came forward claiming he had promised to marry her as well. Poor Eleanor. I hope she finds happiness. You are too kind. Most women would want revenge." Victoria shook her head. "I have everything I want right here. A man who loves me honestly, children who are healthy and happy, work that fulfills me, a community that cares about us. Why would I waste time on revenge when I could spend it building a life with you?" Adam kissed her temple. "I love you more every day. Victoria Zachariah, you made me the luckiest man alive when you agreed to marry me." "I am the lucky one," Victoria replied. "You saved me from a life built on lies and showed me what true love looks like. You are my honest man, Adam, and I will love you forever." They stood together as the stars began to appear, watching their children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. James caught one carefully in his hands, showing it to his younger siblings before letting it go. Rose laughed with delight, and Henry tried to catch one himself, stumbling on his short legs. "Come here, you three," Victoria called. "Time to get ready for bed." The children came running, and Adam scooped up Henry while Victoria took Rose's hand. James walked beside his father, chattering about the horses he had watched Adam train that day. They went inside together, their house warm and bright with lamplight and love. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Adam and Victoria sat together on the porch swing he had built, rocking gently in the cool evening air. "Do you remember the day I interrupted your wedding?" Adam asked. "How could I forget? I was so angry and humiliated and heartbroken, but also, even in that moment, I felt grateful to you. You saved me, Adam. You saved yourself. You had the courage to call off the wedding, to face the truth even though it hurt. I just gave you the information you needed." Victoria smiled. "You did more than that. You gave me hope when I thought my life was ruined. You showed me what a real man looks like, what real love feels like. You gave me everything I never knew I wanted." Adam pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of their ranch. An owl hooted somewhere in the trees. The horses nickered softly in the barn. A coyote called in the distance. "I am going to Sacramento next week," Adam said. "Mr. Patterson asked me to deliver some horses to a buyer there. Would you like to come with me? Your mother could watch the children for a few days." "I would love that. We have not had time alone together in months." "Then it is settled. We will make a trip of it, stay in a hotel, have some time just for us." The following week, they made the journey to Sacramento, traveling by train with the horses shipped separately. It was strange to be in the city where Charles had lived his double life, but Victoria found she felt nothing but curiosity. That part of her life felt like it had happened to a different person. They completed Adam's business successfully, and the buyer was so impressed with the quality of the horses that he placed an order for 6 more. Afterward, Adam took Victoria to a nice restaurant for dinner, then to a show at the theater. It felt wonderful to be young and in love, dressed in their finest, enjoying the city's pleasures. On their last evening, they walked along the Sacramento River as the sun set. "I am glad we came," Victoria said, "but I am ready to go home. I miss the children, and I miss our ranch." "I feel the same way. As nice as the city is, it is not for me. I need open spaces, room to breathe, and I need our life, the one we have built together." "Then let us go home tomorrow, back to Grass Valley, back to our children and our work and our life." They did return the next day, and the children greeted them with squeals of delight. James wanted to hear all about the horses Adam had delivered. Rose showed her mother the drawing she had made. Henry simply clung to Victoria's skirts, unwilling to let her out of his sight. Life continued its steady rhythm. The children grew, the business prospered, the school expanded. When James was 8, he began helping his father with the horses, showing a natural talent for training. Rose proved to be brilliant at her studies, reading advanced books and asking questions that challenged even Victoria's teaching abilities. Henry was the dreamer of the family, always off in his own world, creating elaborate stories and games. Victoria became pregnant twice more in the following years, giving birth to twin girls when she was 30 years old. Sarah and Emma were identical, with their father's hazel eyes and their mother's dark hair. They were inseparable from birth, creating their own language and finishing each other's sentences. Adam proved to be as devoted to his daughters as to his sons, teaching all his children to ride, to work hard, to be honest and kind. Victoria taught them to read and think, to question and explore. Together, they raised children who were confident, capable, and caring. On their 10th anniversary, the community threw a celebration in Adam and Victoria's honor. The new schoolhouse, now substantial enough to accommodate 40 students, was decorated with ribbons and flowers. A band played, and there was dancing and food and speeches. Mr. Patterson stood up to toast the couple. 10 years ago, Adam Zachariah did something that took tremendous courage. He rode through the night to save a woman he barely knew from making a terrible mistake. Some people thought he was crazy, that he had no right to interfere. But Adam knew the truth had to be told, even if it cost him everything. And Victoria Turner, she showed equal courage in facing that truth and starting over. Together, they have built something beautiful, A marriage based on honesty and respect, a family full of love, a business built on integrity, and a school that has changed this community for the better. They are an example to us all of what is possible when two good people find each other. The crowd erupted in cheers. Adam pulled Victoria to her feet and they danced together as their children watched, their faces glowing with pride in their parents. 10 years, Victoria murmured against Adam's chest as they swayed to the music. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. The best 10 years of my life, Adam replied, and the first of many more to come. Do you ever regret it? The path we have taken? We have worked so hard and we still do not have the wealth that Charles promised me. Adam pulled back to look at her. Regret you? Regret our children, our home, our life? Victoria, I would not trade one moment of what we have for all the wealth in California. You are my everything. Victoria smiled, tears shimmering in her eyes. You are mine as well. My honest man, my true love, my partner in everything. They kissed, and their children groaned good-naturedly at their parents' display of affection. James covered his younger siblings' eyes, making them all laugh. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow. When Victoria was 35, her mother passed away peacefully in her sleep. Martha had lived long enough to see her daughter happily married, her grandchildren growing, and her son-in-law become a respected member of the community. She died, knowing Victoria's life had turned out far better than either of them could have hoped on that awful day when Adam had interrupted the wedding. Victoria grieved deeply, but found comfort in Adam's steady presence and her children's love. They buried Martha in the Grass Valley Cemetery, beneath a large oak tree, and Victoria visited the grave every week with fresh flowers. When James turned 18, he told his parents he wanted to attend university in San Francisco to study veterinary medicine. It was a bold dream, but Adam and Victoria had always encouraged their children to reach for more. They used their savings to send him, proud beyond words when he was accepted. Rose followed her brother to university 2 years later, determined to become a teacher like her mother. Henry surprised everyone by announcing he wanted to be a writer, and he too went off to study literature and journalism. The twins, Sarah and Emma, remained at home longer, helping their parents run the ranch and the school. But eventually, they too spread their wings. Sarah became a nurse, while Emma chose to stay in Grass Valley and take over the school when Victoria was ready to retire. By the time Adam and Victoria reached their 20th anniversary, their children were grown and making their own ways in the world. James had become a successful veterinarian in Sacramento, married to a kind woman named Helen, with 2 children of his own. Rose taught at a prestigious girls' school in San Francisco and had recently become engaged to a fellow teacher. Henry was writing for a newspaper in Los Angeles, his articles gaining attention and acclaim. Sarah worked at a hospital in San Francisco, while Emma ran the school in Grass Valley with the same passion her mother had brought to it. Adam and Victoria found themselves alone again in the house that had once been full of children's laughter. At first it felt strange and quiet, but gradually they adjusted, rediscovering each other in the peace. We did well, Adam said one evening as they sat on their porch, now older and more weathered but still solid. Our children are good people, making their own marks on the world. We did do well, Victoria agreed. She was 42 now, with silver threading through her dark hair, but Adam still looked at her with the same love he had shown on their wedding day. I'm so proud of them, and so grateful for the life we have built. Do you ever think about that day? When I interrupted your wedding? Victoria smiled. Sometimes. I think about how terrified I was, how humiliated. But mostly I think about how you looked at me when you said I deserved an honest man. You gave me something precious that day, Adam. You gave me the truth, and then you gave me real love. You kept your promise. You have never lied to me, not once in 20 years. And I never will. You are my heart, Victoria. Everything good in my life started the day I found the courage to walk into that church. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as the sun set over their ranch. The land they had built together, the life they had created, all of it was testament to the power of honesty, courage, and love. Years continued to flow like a river, sometimes smooth and sometimes turbulent, but always moving forward. When Adam was 50 years old, he began teaching young cowboys his methods of horse training, passing on his knowledge to a new generation. Victoria, at 48, finally retired from teaching, content to let Emma carry on the legacy of the school. They began traveling more, visiting their children and grandchildren scattered across California. James and Helen had 4 children now, and Victoria loved being grandmother to them all. Rose had married her teacher, Robert, and they had twin boys who reminded Victoria of her own twins. Henry had married a fellow writer named Clara, and they were expecting their first child. Sarah had met a doctor at her hospital and married him in a simple ceremony that nonetheless overflowed with joy. Only Emma remained unmarried, devoted to the school and her students. But she seemed happy, content with her choices, and Victoria respected that. Not everyone needed to follow the same path. When Adam and Victoria celebrated their 30th anniversary, all their children came home to Grass Valley for a grand celebration. The ranch house, expanded over the years into a substantial home, was filled with family. Grandchildren ran through the rooms, their laughter echoing off the walls. The adult children caught up with each other, sharing stories of their lives and work. At dinner that night, with everyone gathered around the large table Adam had built years ago, James stood to make a toast. 30 years ago, our father did something remarkable. He risked everything to tell the truth, to save a woman he barely knew from a lifetime of unhappiness, and our mother had the courage to face that truth and start over. Their example has shaped all of us. They taught us to be honest, to work hard, to love deeply, and to never settle for less than we deserve. They showed us what a real marriage looks like, what real partnership means. Dad, Mom, thank you for everything you have given us. Thank you for showing us how to live with integrity and love. Tears streamed down Victoria's face as all her children raised their glasses. To Adam and Victoria, they chorused, and the grandchildren joined in, their small voices adding to the celebration. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Adam and Victoria walked out to the barn together, checking on the horses one last time, as was their habit. The spring night was cool and clear, stars brilliant overhead. 30 years, Victoria said, leaning against a stall door. When you walked into that church and changed my life, did you imagine this? All of this? Adam came to stand beside her, his arm around her waist. I hoped. I dreamed. But the reality has been better than anything I could have imagined. You have given me everything, Victoria. A home, a family, a purpose. You have made me the man I always wanted to be. You were always that man. I just gave you a chance to show it. She turned to face him, reaching up to touch his face. His hair was gray now, his face lined, but his eyes still held the same warmth and honesty she had first seen all those years ago. I love you, Adam Zachariah. I will love you until my last breath. And beyond, Adam said, kissing her. I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next. They stood together in the barn, holding each other, comfortable in the silence that only comes from decades of true partnership. The horses shifted in their stalls, and somewhere an owl hooted. It was an ordinary moment, and yet it contained everything important. As they grew older, Adam and Victoria slowed down but never stopped. In their 60s, they still rose early and worked the ranch, though they now had hired help to do the heavy labor. They still sat on their porch each evening, watching the sunset, talking about their day, making plans for the future. Their grandchildren visited often, drawn to the warmth and love of the ranch. Victoria taught them to read and think, just as she had taught their parents. Adam taught them about horses and hard work and integrity. The children adored them both, seeing in their grandparents a model of what love could be. When Victoria turned 70, Adam surprised her with a party that brought together family from all over California. Even great-grandchildren were there now, a new generation carrying forward the legacy of honesty and love that Adam and Victoria had started. How does it feel to be 70? Emma asked her mother during the party. Victoria looked around at her family, at the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, at Adam standing across the room talking with James, at the ranch they had built together, at the life they had created. It feels like a blessing, she said simply. Every moment of it has been a blessing. Adam was 72 now, and though he still moved with the confidence of a cowboy, he tired more easily. Victoria, at 70, had arthritis in her hands that made sewing difficult. But they had each other, and that was enough. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching another sunset, Adam said quietly, "I want you to know something, Victoria. If I had to do it all over again, I would not change a single thing. Walking into that church that day and telling the truth was the bravest thing I ever did. But every moment since has been a gift. You have been the love of my life, and I am grateful for every day we have had together." Victoria felt tears on her cheeks. "Why are you saying this? You sound like you're saying goodbye." "No, not goodbye. I just wanted to make sure you knew, in case I do not say it enough. You say it every day, in 1,000 different ways, but I will never tire of hearing it. I love you, Adam. You saved me from a life of lies and gave me a life of truth. You are my honest man, my true love, my everything." They sat together as the stars came out, holding hands as they had for more than 40 years, content in the knowledge that their love had been real and true and lasting. Adam lived to be 78, Victoria to 76. When Adam finally passed away peacefully in his sleep, Victoria held his hand and whispered that she would follow him soon. She did, just 6 months later, dying quietly in the home they had built together. They were buried side by side in the Grass Valley Cemetery, beneath a large oak tree not far from Victoria's mother. Their children erected a simple headstone that read, "Adam and Victoria Zachariah." They lived with honesty, loved with passion, and built a legacy of integrity, together forever. The ranch was divided among their children, but Emma kept the main house, preserving it as a reminder of her parents' love. The school continued to operate, now named the Victoria Zachariah School, in honor of its founder. Adam's methods of horse training were still used and taught throughout California. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren told stories about Adam and Victoria, about the dramatic day when a cowboy had interrupted a wedding to tell the truth, about the love that had grown from that moment of courage. The story became legend in Grass Valley, a reminder that honesty and courage could change lives, that real love was worth fighting for, that the best things in life were built on truth. And in that small cemetery, beneath the oak tree, Adam and Victoria rested together, their love story complete. It had begun with betrayal and pain, but it had transformed into something beautiful and lasting. They had built a life together, based on the foundation Adam had promised that first day: honesty, respect, and unwavering love. It was a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the greatest romances begin not with grand gestures, but with simple truth, that the most lasting relationships are built not on wealth or status, but on integrity and genuine care. Adam and Victoria had shown their family, their community, and everyone who knew them that true love was possible, that it was worth waiting for, and that when you found it, it could last a lifetime and beyond. Their legacy lived on in their descendants, in the school that still taught children, in the ranch that still raised fine horses, and in the story that was still told in Grass Valley. The story of how a cowboy had walked into a church one September morning and changed a woman's life forever, how he had said, "You deserve an honest man instead," and then spent the rest of his life proving that he was that man. It was a love story that had begun with pain but ended with joy. A story of courage and truth, of second chances and new beginnings. A story of two people who found each other against the odds and built something beautiful together. And that, Victoria would have said if she could, was the best kind of story there was.